Hey guys, Andrew Henderson, Nomad Capitalist, here in my hotel room on my vacation in Yangon, Myanmar, where there is plenty of hand sanitizer on the shelves, plenty of products. People are in pretty good spirits and taking pretty basic precautions. And so in this video, I want to talk about the opportunity to get a second passport, how you can use the current situation to do that, and really why this current situation of this panic that's going on right now really makes it more important for everyone to consider the option of having a second home, having real estate overseas, having a residence permit overseas, and ideally having a second passport, second citizenship as well. You know, what's interesting to me is we're seeing through this panic that the idea of a good nationality is somewhat going challenged. I talked to a lawyer of mine in Colombia yesterday, and she said, because I'm going through my permanent residence application. It's the second time I've done a residence process in Colombia. And she said, you know, we just cracked down on these, I think, 8 or 10 different countries that you've seen in the news. Colombia has put some border controls in. One of those countries is the U.S. And she says it may be a little bit harder for Americans to get into Colombia right now. They can, if they're totally fine, then it may be not so bad. But there's certainly more scrutiny on them than there would be on, for example, people of my nationality, you know, the nationality that I'm using to go to Colombia. And so it's an interesting thing where, an American, for example, or others, an Italian, certainly, South Korean, very good passport. You know, those are 3 examples right now where it's going to be harder to travel around. Now, I'm not saying have a second passport and be deathly ill when going to someone else's country, but what I'm saying is, we either learn from things or we just continue to fall into the same, traps going forward. This virus, like all the other viruses we've seen over the last decade and before, like the Y2K bug, like everything that's happened, will eventually subside. It's unfortunate that some people are, being harmed by it, but it will subside. Things will go back to normal. Most people will forget about it. What I want you to learn from this is it's a great time to have options. And I think in an increasingly global world, there are some stereotypes that get applied. Most of the time, if you're American, Canadian, Danish, whatever, you're treated pretty well. That may change in times like these, depending on where there are different crises or where there are different outbreaks of whatever. It doesn't have to be a virus, it can be anything else. And so having that plan B, having that insurance policy, to me is increasingly important because the rules of the game that you've known up until now, I think, could change. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm not an alarmist. I'm not prepping and storing food. I was never one of those guys. But I think what you're seeing is an opportunity to really prepare yourself. And so we had one gentleman that we're working with who said, with negative interest rates or 0 interest rates and things on sale, now's a great time to get in and move some capital that would be doing nothing otherwise into assets that can get you a second citizenship. Okay. And so what I want to talk about in this video today specifically is for those of you who may be sitting at home, those of you who may have a little bit of extra free time now, some ways that you can go about starting this process, okay? Because here's what's going to happen, okay? And I, just as a student of human behavior, people get scared by stuff. They dig in. Then they figure out, what can I do to avoid this fear? For some people, it might be some of the stuff we talk about here with internationalization. And then once things get better again, they often forget it and they go on with their merry life until the next problem comes and they get fearful again and they say they're going to do it and they don't. So I want you to use this panic as a reminder that some of these sane internationalization strategies we talk about actually make sense. Now, a lot of folks will have some extra time. So what can you do to get a second passport without having to be going all over the world right now? Well, number one, look at your family tree. One of the first things I do when I'm talking to folks, and sadly a lot of people I talk to don't qualify for this, but some do and many didn't know it, is to go through your family tree, look at your grandparents, your great-grandparents, occasionally even beyond that, okay? Now these so-called citizenship by descent programs are not always straightforward, they're not always fast. I had one gentleman recently, he missed out by a couple of years. His father naturalized in the United States a little bit too early, and now he doesn't qualify for this great European passport. On the other hand, I've had other people who were so focused on the grandparents, great-grandparents part that they didn't realize, oh yeah, my dad's Canadian, I can be Canadian. Or, I think we had a gentleman, actually no, it was a lady, it was a gentleman's wife, a lady in, I think it was Australia, and had a parent from New Zealand, and so was able to do that. Okay, sometimes it's the simplest things that people don't think about. I did an interview the other day with John from Bulldog Mindset, and he was telling me he's got an Italian family, he's got a Turkish family. I sent him over to my research department. Seems that there's some possibilities for him to get a second passport. And so why I like these is not because they're super duper fast. And again, it's not because they don't have a lot of holes in the program sometimes. Again, I mean, it's not the first time I've heard someone who missed out by this much because someone left the country a year too early or naturalized a year too late or whatever. But if you qualify, you can generally apply for the citizenship and the passport that comes with it through an embassy in your own country, so you don't have to travel. Now, if you're like myself and you live in smaller countries where you may live in the capital, my homes are in Kuala Lumpur, Bogota, Tbilisi in Georgia. Generally speaking, I'm in the capital or, very close. Malaysia, the government is largely in Putrajaya, a quick drive away. But, if you're in the United States, you may involve some traveling depending on the country. But nevertheless, you can generally work remotely and certainly within your own country. If you qualify through Ancestry to get a passport, you can do the forms there. And you saw in the news, I don't know if it was before, like right before Trump got elected, people were just hedging, or after he got elected, a lot of folks who had German ancestry in the US were going and getting their German passports, and others. And none of those folks left. Again, there's some countries like Italy where if you go there, it could be faster. Obviously, you don't want to go to Italy right now. But that's a process that you can get started. And so I would look into that option. We do it for folks all the time. Again, not everyone qualifies, but if you do, it's one where you don't have to travel. Now, I often don't recommend citizenship by descent as the only passport, especially if you've got a financial or investment or tax or some kind of other motive involved, because it may take a while. But at least you can get the ball rolling. As they say, the time is going to pass anyway, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it takes to get your passport. That time is going to go by anyway, whether you're applying for it and waiting or not. And so if you have some extra free time right now, that's what I would look into. Number 2 is citizenship by investment. I think citizenship by investment programs are a great way to create a passport portfolio. And I know that some of the folks in the West that I've worked with are not as interested in them because they feel like it's a waste of money. So the most common way to become an economic citizen through a CBI program, citizenship by investment, is by making a donation. You go to any of the 5 Caribbean countries that offer it. You go to Vanuatu, and those are the big ones. Starts at a $100,000 donation plus some fees. Okay. Now, if I'm buying an insurance policy, that's not so bad. I did it in St. Lucia a couple years ago. I may do it again in the future. I may do some other program. At that point, it'd be more for fun. But if you have the wealth to cover that, not such a bad deal. St. Lucia has 0 coupon government bonds, $500,000. You get your money back eventually. Probably a decent opportunity cost there, but if you're just sitting around, I have a couple of folks I've worked with recently, they've been stockpiling cash. They've got millions of dollars in cash. And so if you're leaving your cash in the bank at 0%, maybe there's an opportunity like that interests you. Programs like Turkey, where you can buy real estate. Now, Turkey does require a little bit of time on the ground, but you could delay that. You can buy real estate in Turkey, $250,000 US. The lira has gone down. Sadifa, our real estate team member who speaks Turkish, and we're currently working with our real estate agent there on the ground to remotely purchase a property in Turkey. I'm looking at paying, after the recent lira devaluation, under $700 a meter for a property in Taksim Square, basically. Right next door, a couple hundred meters away. In actually livable move-in condition. Bring your sofa, bring your bed, bring your toothbrush condition. And so you could stockpile, or you could stack up a bunch of those and get Turkish citizenship. You could do a lot of the real estate processes remotely. You could do things like power of attorney. And your time on the ground would actually be very limited and, again, could be delayed. For the Caribbean programs where you make a donation, no trip to that country is required. You can do it all from home. And so you literally could sit at home like a 400-pound guy on a bed or something. And you could go through the process of getting a second citizenship. They'll mail the passport to you. Now, there's going to be a donation involved. But you know what? For some folks, if you have income, if you have wealth, it's easier. than flying all over the world and going and getting residence permits and renewing them and going back every 6 months, and doing this and doing that, and maybe the currency fluctuates and you lose something. I mean, for some people, it's just better to pay the donation, but there are other programs that work. Montenegro has a real estate / donation hybrid. Cyprus isn't taking applications. Malta, you do need to live there, but you've got a number of programs. Citizenship by investment, you can do it basically from home. And again, what we'll do a lot of times for folks who want to minimize their travel and minimize their time in the country for reasons other than the current reasons, but just because they're busy, we'll do a lot of powers of attorney. And if you have people that you can trust, if you're vetting people as I am, and you have people you can trust, then that can work. So number 2, citizenship by investment. You don't really have to travel to become a citizen by investment. The third way is through naturalization. Now, naturalization, as we often talk about, in most countries, and in most countries that you would think of at least, involves going and living in another country. So you get a residence permit, you go there, you live, you learn the language, you pay taxes, you do all that. What I'm always looking for is countries that are lesser known, that are looking for some kind of investment, looking for some people to come and create value for their country, who don't require actual on-the-ground residence. These processes, you can sometimes even get the entire residence remotely and then come and collect it. So for example, my process in Colombia, I was in Colombia, I found a property, and I've been creating basically a standard operating procedure over the last couple of years for buying property in Colombia, because it is involved. You want to know the right agents. A lot of them are bad. There's a lot of little things you need to know about Colombia. It is not a beginner's market in the same way like a Georgia, for example. You can go, and even that's not maybe as super duper beginner friendly, but it's a lot more straightforward on the legal side. Colombia, you've got a lot of things to check off. But if you had someone to handle that for you and you knew what to do, you could buy the property remotely. That can all be done through power of attorney. And so that's something that sometimes we'll help people do, is we'll show them pictures, show them videos, have people go and get the data, we'll do the title check. All that stuff can be done remotely. So I could have done that all remotely and then gone and applied for my Colombian permanent residence, which I did. I applied where I live. All right, so I have a Malaysian residence permit. I went and applied through the embassy in Malaysia. And so the only thing that I need to do is, if and when I'm approved, is go to Colombia within 6 months. I'm working in another residence program right now for a country that I don't plan to live in. I actually do like Colombia and would like to spend some time in Colombia. I'm working in another one. Basically, it's just a test. The entire process can be done remotely. You really don't even need to go there. Now, that passport takes longer to get. It's a 10-year process, so it's not like a fast second passport, but it is a residence permit, and it is a pretty tax-friendly country if that's on your agenda. And so there's many different processes where through power of attorney, you can make the necessary investments to qualify for residence, whether that's setting up a company, whether that's hiring someone. Obviously, you can do that remotely, whether it's buying real estate, buying government bonds. There's numerous different ways you can qualify for residence. You can make those investments remotely. Obviously, you can set up a company, you can hire someone. Those things are easy. Real estate, you really want to have the right people, of course. You don't want to buy something that turns out to be terrible. I've had some pretty good luck in recent years buying properties sight unseen. I've bought 2 or 3 sight unseen because I had people who knew what I was looking for, and they were on the ground, and they did it for me. But anyway, that can all be done. And then once that's done, you can generally use power of attorney, which will generally need to be notarized or apostilled in your home country. So you'll need to do some work where you live. And then you can go out and you can send that to the attorney and the other professionals in the other country, and they can go through the process. Not every country does this. Some countries you do need to go there. It may be for as little as 1 day. It may be a week. In some countries, it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We were recently looking at the program in the Philippines. You got to be there for a month. Panama, 3 weeks. But others are 0, 1 day, couple days, what have you. And again, in the case of like Colombia, you could push that back many, many months. We're actually just going and applying for the whole process and getting approved, and then you're going and collecting the subsequent documents. Okay, so every program has its own unique aspects to it. We can't get into all of this in one video, and obviously I'm helping a lot of folks do this right now, and we always try and be fair to them, that they're getting the benefits of the knowledge we've created around this. But those are 3 of the ways that you can do it. The first two ways you never need to travel. The third way, you can greatly postpone the travel. And so, really, again, if you have some downtime. Now, not everyone has downtime, and we've had folks coming to us and saying basically what I just told you. I want to get a second passport because I've been putting it off. Or I want to get, I want to move some money out of the country because I've been putting it off. And you know what? Business is a little slower. So far our business has been doing pretty well. We'll see what happens as this drags on, but we've been doing pretty well because I think people are kind of heeding what I'm talking about right here, at least some, and saying, let's get some of this stuff done. Now is the time. This is the kick in the butt. This is the idea that, not all my money should be in one currency. Not all my eggs should be in one basket. And so if you look at it from that perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunities. You've seen a lot of currencies see anywhere from a 3% drop to, I saw one that's down about 20%. I mean, the Russian ruble is down substantially. The Colombian peso is down substantially. Other currencies like the Armenian dram, they're down 1%. But it's an opportunity for you guys to get in there and make sure that you're protected the next time something like this happens.